Hi everyone, this is High Priestess Tehila from the Covenant of the Open Mind. This is our seventh lecture in the series of Wicca and Witchcraft 101. This one focuses on kind of the last stage. It's called Introduction to the Divine Persona. The idea behind a divine persona is it's separate than the ego. It's kind of like a magical self, something that just helps you help others see the magical side of you. It's like a magical form of ego, really, but it's separate too. Some would say that it's like the state that you get when the Kundalini energy is flowing through you and all your chakras are aligned and your crown chakra is open. So the divine persona is kind of your magical definition, okay? And so I'll let you guys know this time, actually for the first time, we have a few people here live for this course because we have a Covenstead now, and it's located in Brookhaven, Pennsylvania. So if you live in the area and you want to come to live courses or faith discussions or rituals, definitely check out our calendar. And shoot us an email with any interest. And that's open to anyone. You don't have to be in the coven to want to come to open public events at our Covenstead. So shoot us an email if you're interested in anything that you see on our website. So the divine persona is really defined by your own personal practice. Let's move this mic a little closer. So your personal practice is what deities you worship, if you have any specific deities, if whether or not you worship deities at all, that's all part of your divine persona. The way you speak, the way you pray or give blessings, the way you give toasts. So as you become set in your spirituality, whatever practices or traditions you decide are right for you, you have to also determine how you can act so that when other people are around you, they understand exactly how you feel and what you stand for and how you interact with the world, so that it's easier to get along with people. And that's the mark of a truly spiritually enlightened person, right? Someone who is always aware of themselves and how they fit into the world around them. And ordinarily, someone who is specifically on the Wiccan path, someone who would then be trying to often help people around them. The Wicca or the witches were the wise ones, the healers, the women and men of the different tribes from all over the world. As we talked about, all the different sources of Wicca from all over the world had different ways that these people would give back in the form of like creating medicines and healing the sick and growing spices to use for magic and for healing. So those who are on the Wiccan path specifically will be interested in helping others as a part of their divine persona, and that's the long-term goal, right? So when you're a high priest or priestess in Wicca, what you're giving back to the world around you is your awareness of the needs of others and how to help others through the experiences that you've gained. And you have to be in a state where you no longer really need help yourself. That isn't to say that you aren't still learning. Of course, you're still able to learn from anyone. And part of feeling enlightened is feeling that everyone has something that they can teach you. And instead of telling people that they're wrong, instead, when they say something you don't agree with necessarily, it makes you instead want to ask them a question and not just say, well, you're wrong because that's different than what I think. You wouldn't jump to that conclusion. So being a high priest or a high priestess, the end goal is helping others. And there's different ways to do that. There's green witches who grow herbs and make incenses and that kind of thing. Then there's healers who specifically will learn things like Reiki. They'll learn things, they'll learn different like massage techniques. They'll learn whatever is required, crystal healing. They can learn chakra healing, whatever kind of healing they want to learn, really. You'll have people who specialize in shields. You'll have people who specialize in like divination, tarot, runes, scrying. They'll specialize in usually a few kinds. But the people who use scrying, they'll just be like, they'll do tea leaves, they'll do all kinds of scrying, but you have people that specialize in different aspects of magic. But all of them use this to help give back to other people, and they all have a slew of different beliefs. Some people charge for their tarot readings, some people don't. Some people don't believe that that's acceptable, and some people think that they should charge for their time. So it really is up to you how you want to define your morality or personal practices. There's no real central rules in Wicca, especially not for solitary practitioners. But the gist of the Wiccan path specifically would be that a priest is someone who has a definition and understands their own role in the world and is striving to be their best self, so that they can initiate into high priesthood, where they are now giving back to the world and they're pretty firm in who they are and they don't need much from other people, right? So that's kind of the progression. And then when you're an elder, you're so far along that you would often counsel many different high priests at once. You would probably be writing literature or producing ritual documents for people to use. And you would have been doing it for a long time. I can't talk to what it's like really to be an elder, because I have no experience being an elder or having an elder. I know that some lineages have elders that are not even that old. But for the most part, elder is something that you don't get until much later in life, and it really just means kind of a mastery over the craft and giving back and feeling at peace with everything in the world. So the first steps to having a divine persona are to decide on the basic things. Do you have patron deities? Do you have a patron, a matron? They say, I prefer to say patroness instead of patron, or instead of matron, because I don't know why, just different ways of saying the same thing. But it's whether or not you have one or two or however many. A lot of people find they work with one at first degree as a priest, and then once they initiate later, they'll realize that there was another one that's even a better fit. Some people pick two and that's what they have, and some people don't pick at all. They have like an archetype like the Lord and Lady, and they don't use any specific incarnation of them or aspect of them. So some people don't really have deity at all, though that's not particularly Wiccan. There are atheist Wiccans, so you won't be out of place. You just won't find any covens really like that. That's a very solitary thing for the most part. But for some reason you couldn't form a coven of atheist witches. But why have a patron in the first place? So patrons, the purpose of having a circle is to create sacred space, and what you find as you do ritual is that sacred space feels like home. And when you cast circle and you're standing in your space, it feels like you're home and everything is at peace and everything is happy. So having a patron helps create a familiar, comforting energy, which is exactly what the sacred space should feel like. So if you're invoking the same god or goddess every time, their energy starts to feel very peaceful and part of you, and it's easier to feel at home. It helps bring structure and guidance to personal practices. A lot of people find that having a particular patron helps them choose what theme to use and helps them keep all their rituals on a similar theme so that they don't lose track and jump around and do all kinds of weird unrelated things to lots of different deities. Like they feel it helps them progress along one particular pathway. And they'll choose a deity that matches the archetype that they're trying to improve on. So maybe they have issues with communication, they might choose Mercury or even Hermes, and then maybe they will do ritual literally working with their throat chakra, and working with the energy of Mercury, which is communication. And they would do rituals on certain times of the day, at certain days of the week. Monday, mercredi, like that's what it is in French. Monday, Mercury's day, that's Monday. So they would do a ritual then, and they might align it with astrology, that kind of thing. They would research all about it, really understand what that energy feels like so that they can pull that energy into their lives. So they would find that having one particular patron helps them work toward that specific goal, and that's why people pick patrons. So that's one benefit. So regular rituals to personal deities, that's like, doing it on a regular basis, like every day, once a week, once every couple of weeks, whatever. Doing rituals at a regular interval, it brings divinity into your everyday life. It makes you have a stronger and healthier crown chakra, which means that you're always acting divinely, which means that if your goal is to be giving and understanding and empathic and to work with the world and work with nature, then that's a good thing, right? So in Wicca, we think that having a healthy crown chakra makes us more effective witches. So that's like a goal here. Then it also brings you, peace and prosperity and acceptance and wisdom. And there's 8 virtues that are in my Book of Shadows. That's over on that shelf. Can you grab it? It's white, the white book. There's 8 virtues within Wicca that were defined by, I think, Gardner defined it. Yeah. And that's in Wicca specifically, we're said to gain these 8 virtues of the goddess. I have to find it. Yeah. I actually don't know if it's in this book. I think it might only be in my other Book of Shadows. Yeah, it's not in here. It's in my other Book of Shadows. It's in the small one. I think it's in that bag. Okay, well, we'll come back to that. Yeah. So, when finding a patron, let's start by talking about the fact that patron deities are not a revolutionary concept to modern Wicca. Patron deities have existed for a long time. Patron is any deity that gives support to a person, organization, place, or activity. They had lots of patron deities in Samaria, Greece, you look for it, Rome. It's like 8 virtues, it's listed, it'll be obvious. City-state, where like the whole state worshipped like Athena, and they had like Athens, for instance, and they had like a huge temple to Athena, so that kind of thing was all in that region. In Celtic regions, Greece again, which spanned for a long time, so that's why you see this variation. And Norse, they had like clan or house And in fact, in covens, in like the Gardnerian tradition, oftentimes they have the names of their deities. They don't tell anybody who's not initiated in the coven because they're coven deities, and that's like the norm for them. And then they also would have deities for the specific city where people lived, and they would worship, like, there's so many deities. It was like crazy. And then they had some that like were in common for everyone, and that were like big tropes and big archetypes and were very commonly worshipped. And so they just like had so many deities. And then there was a lot of cultures that had deities over specific activities, like Egypt and Greece and the Aztecs had gods of like crafts and stuff like that, and magic and, you know, activities. Now, not everyone chooses to have a patron. Some prefer nameless deities like the Lord and Lady. Some invoke different deities depending on the purpose and the type of the rituals. So you'll get people, like I said, maybe they'll invoke Mercury because they want to improve communication. Maybe they don't want to take him as a patron they work with all the time, but maybe they're just doing something where they want his energy in that specific thing. Or very commonly, people might invoke Tote, like we have a full moon ritual to Tote that involves using his energy to perform more effective magic. And it's a very good ritual. You can check it out. It's on our website under the rituals, in the Ritual Encyclopedia. So there's a lot of reasons why you would use different deities for different things, and a lot of people just stick to that and don't have patrons at all, and that's fine as well. You know, people can do whatever they want. But when you're choosing your divine persona, you know, recognize that this is a choice whether or not you have a patron at all, and if you do have a patron, which patron, then that's what we're going to talk about in a minute. So I wanted to highlight some interesting things about patrons across different cultures. And I think that it's important to understand that even though the different cultures have similar beings that serve similar functions and that basically fit similar archetypes, there are differences between these cultures and the way that these people think that make these, you know, really distinct, different patrons. And when you're deciding what patron to work with, you really have to consider the energy in that specific way. So, okay, one of the people here just found in my little miniature book of shadows, I finally found it. So going back to this slide, the 8 virtues of the goddess that Wicca believes that you'll get more of in your life if you do regular ritual to deity are, so the 8 virtues of the goddess: beauty and strength, power and compassion, mirth and reverence, honor and humility. So that's what they believe you get from invoking deity regularly with a personal deity. Which is why most Wiccans do have a patron, at least one patron. Okay, so, but when selecting a patron, and selecting in quotations, because we'll talk about how most people don't really do a lot of selecting in a minute. But, so there's different differences, and good job finding that, by the way. There's different differences in cultures, and it might not be obvious what the difference is, so you have to kind of understand the context, the linguistics, because you have to understand that the way people speak, the way people form sentences, directly correlates with how they think about the world subconsciously. And these archetypes are really primitive forms of science, where they're coming to understand the true nature of the world through analogy and metaphor, because they don't have rigid language like math to describe what's going on, because the math hadn't been discovered or invented, and people hadn't developed enough reason to be able to understand it, even if it had. The world was not evolved enough. So it described itself in stories and archetypes and analogies. And I've got a couple examples to illustrate the difference and what I mean here. So the first example I have is Hell, with one L, versus Hades. So Hell is the name of the ruler and also the location of the underworld in Norse mythology. And Hel, she is the daughter of Loki and the giantess, or Jötun, Angerboda, which directly means grief bringer. Okay, and Loki is chaos. He's basically the lord of chaos. He is the equivalent of the devil, in that chaos is so he's like the chief demon. You know, he's the head honcho in charge of chaos. And the consciousness of chaos, as we learned in 2 lectures ago, is demons, right? So he is basically Satan. So you have the daughter of chaos and grief bringer. And that gives you hell, concealed place. It gives you where people go when they're not living, to a concealed place. But they're not one with chaos. So they're not in hell in the classic Christian sense of the word, from which hell, as we know it in Christianity, gets its name. It's different. Okay? Because one is Gaulish and one is Germanic, fully Germanic. And that's an important distinction. Now, right now we're comparing it to Hades. That's Greek, okay? Hades is the son of Cronus, which means commander, and Rhea, which means connectivity. And so Hades is the son of a Titan. Okay, he is in the tri-god with Jupiter and Neptune. The sky, the sea, and the underworld. The above world and the underworld. The life and the death. So in Christianity's creation mythos, we look at the creation of sky and sea. That's all we care about. They don't care about death. They worship Jesus. They worship life itself. But in Greek paganism, they worshiped both. And they found that you needed both life and death to complete God. Okay, so Hades is just the ruler of death, and we are all connected to death through Hades. That is the Greek interpretation of this same ruler of the underworld. See how it's different? In one, it's like it snatches people at random, it takes people away, it makes people lost to the world, and it's a terrible thing. In the other, it's seen as more benevolent and more honor-bound, something that we all must do, and the inevitable fate of the world. So they're both rulers of the underworld, and they share the same name and the place. You know, Hades is in Hades and hell is in hell. But they view Hades as one who connects all people through a unified fate and a shared sense of loss. In the end, we all must die, and that is a concept that made Greeks do crazy things, like march out and defend their entire people with only 300 warriors. Okay, that is where that whole culture comes from. The belief that death is glorious. And they're one of the only Mediterranean people that felt that way in ancient times. Most of the people who felt that way were actually Germanic. But it's funny because you don't see that same theme echoed with hell. You see it only in the other gods. And it's more complicated. Hell hides people away at random, bringing sorrow and loss to the masses. So if you're worshiping hell, then you are sorrowful, and you want to feel bad. Maybe you're at a funeral. That would be appropriate. If you're doing pretty much anything else, it would not really be appropriate. If you're trying to reach out to dead spirits and have communion with them, and you are looking for guidance finding certain spirits, then Hades you could work with for that, but hell you couldn't. So if you were going to choose the patron, that would be an important distinction, right? So you have to understand the language, the understand what the concepts mean in the original language, do the translating and find out, like, what are these archetypes really?
Yeah, so it just sounds like you should do your research a lot first before picking a deity, because there's a bunch of deities that symbolize the same thing but have different characteristics and traits.
Yeah, and pretty much all of them fit some of the same archetypes. They all fit into, there's 12 archetypes. They all fit somewhere, they're all similar in so many ways. But there are definitely a lot of subtle distinctions that will affect when you work with them and what their energy really means. Yeah. And so sometimes you'll think that you have a calling from hell, say, and then you'll just be upset because you don't want to work with this terrible energy, but then you realize that, hey, actually it's the energy of Hades, and the only reason it didn't feel right is because it was different than you expected. This happens a lot. I've seen people work with Mercury, and then they were just they would switch to work with Hermes, and it was way better. Similar, but totally different. So it definitely matters. I have another example. This one illustrates it even better. So Gaia it means earth, and she is the first being in Greek mythology. She's the primordial creator. She springs forth amongst chaos and eros, which mean in Greek are actually given as chasm and love. And she's not born of them, she's born with them. So they're like her siblings. But they're really all one, is the implication. So you have earth, chaos, and love. Tiamat that literally means salt water or abyss, depending on which. It's thought that maybe it was two words shoved together. And she's also a primordial creator, the first one. She's from Sumeria. She was born of nothing and was said to be of chaos itself. So she took chaos and became an embodiment of chaos. So we're looking at a culture that believes we come from the devil first and foremost. Right? Chief chaos, and the devil's a woman. So both of these two beings mothered their full set of pantheons. And both of them had lots of children, and both of their husbands thought the children would overthrow them and would eat their children and destroy their children so that they would never be overthrown. Tiamat's husband was Apsu, meaning fresh water. And Gaia was with Kronos, actually her son, and head of the Titans. And Kronos would eat all of his babies, and Gaia hated it. She loved her babies. Remember, she was born from chaos, but also love. That's the distinction here. So she wanted her babies to live. She hid away Zeus, and then helped Zeus, once he was old enough, plot to overthrow Kronos, and Zeus overthrew Kronos and locked all the Titans away, where they would never escape. And Zeus became head of the pantheon. Tiamat, on the other hand, thought her children made too much noise and turned into a gigantic sea monster and tried to destroy them all. Marduk, son of Enki is lord of the earth, literally lord of that which is below the sky. He gave all of his power to Marduk, representing the transference of godly awareness into humans so that man had the wisdom of the divine, and man could give order to the earth, and through order we could come to be like gods ourselves. And so Marduk killed Tiamat, who had created tons and tons of demons at this point, lots of different monsters of various kinds to try to destroy Earth. And he, in some stories, killed her. In others, he locked her up. And that's where Cthulhu comes from. Cthulhu, the concept of him, is, there's no name Cthulhu. It's said to possibly come from the Greek Chthonic. But it's definitely not really necessarily Sumerian. But the concept of a great sea monster who embodies chaos and is chief demon, and whose tentacles wrap around things and turn them to chaos, that idea is definitely Sumerian, and that is the later stage of Tiamat, who is a tri-goddess in and of herself, in 3 stages. So, there's a lot of a theme here as well of how Marduk overthrew Tiamat because of her irrational and chaotic nature, and how the irrational and chaotic feminine had to be destroyed and given forward to the rational and ordered masculine. And this is where the biased notion of masculine being more reasonable and more ordered comes from. There's no scientific bearing to it at all. It's just entirely based off of this primitive science. But there's a big difference between Gaia and Tiamat. Okay, the kinds of rituals you'd be doing to Gaia are going to be insanely different. If you're invoking Tiamat, then who knows what the fuck you're doing. You're doing something involving chaos energy, and, there's going to be blood involved, and it's going to be very dangerous. If you're invoking Gaia, you're dancing around barefoot in a field, chanting and singing and laughing, and that's it. Right? So, very different. But they're the same primordial creator, the same creation myth, completely the same, with very few fundamental differences that result in extremely different archetypes and modes of thought. So bear this in mind if you're going to try to select a patron. Now I'll say that most of the time you don't select a patron. The patron finds you. But the things that you could be doing to make yourself more available for the patron to come to you, which is you have to wait until a patron has to select you. You don't just select a patron and start ordering them around. So normally your patron would come to you in dreams, in scrying sessions, in divination readings. People might find that their readings start to be skewed, and that everything is pointing them towards a patron, and they're just like, this doesn't even make sense for what I'm asking. And it's just like overpowering it so that you don't actually get a say in what it's finding. The patron, in other words, is hijacking your reading. In scrying sessions, it's very common. And if you are a certain kind of element, you're going to want to do certain different kinds of scrying. So if you're doing like smoke scrying or something else, it might come more easily than one or another. So that's something we'll talk about in a bit. And in dreams are probably the most common when you see them in your dreams. Comes often when you least expect it. You might be doing something stupid, like you might just be driving somewhere that you've driven a million times, and you just look out the window and you see the sun is setting and the moon is a crescent moon and Venus is glowing brightly right next to it, and it's just beautiful. And then you're just like, and you just like feel like you found something that's been missing your whole life, and suddenly you just know. That could be it. Or it could be in a dream. You just have to be patient and be ready. Do some research on a bunch of different patrons. Okay, find a culture that you really like. a pantheon that you generally like, something from your heritage maybe that you feel connected with, and then do research on different patrons there, and just be on the lookout, because when your patron comes, then you'll be ready to identify them, and you won't misidentify them, like I was saying earlier. Yes?
Would you say that your intuition is a strong enough signal for a patron, or does it vary per person?
Yeah, intuition, it's on the slide here. You just follow your intuition. Make sure that you've done your research so you identify it properly, and it shouldn't feel forced. If you feel like you're trying to force a connection where there isn't really a connection, and this happens most often in Christianity, because not everyone is meant to work with Jesus. He's a patron, really, is what he is. Paganism is just like Christianity, and Jesus is just like an aspect of God. That's literally how they worship him, And Jesus is, of course, goodness, the energy that is life, life energy itself. And not everyone is meant to work with a life energy source patron at all. If you're born on a new moon, you would struggle to work with a life energy source patron. If you're born on a waning moon even. It can come from anywhere. So understanding what all these things mean about the different patrons, that's something that is important to identifying the right one for you, if you need one at all. Okay. I hope that makes sense. So the next topic that I have here is why have an element. I say for most this isn't a choice. People just naturally have one. Your element dictates your skill set, what comes most naturally to you. So if your element is spirit-based, then you're probably a medium. And you work with death energy very naturally. Very few people have spirit-based. If your element is air-based, you're probably very good with divination, and you like tarot and runes. If you're, and you're always like dreaming and having dreams to interpret. If you're fire, then you like smoke and bonfires, and drumming and loud, obnoxious things are better for you for rituals. If you're a water element, then, you like to dance and feel the music and go with the flow and be receptive, and that's like more what you do. You might be better into healing, stuff like that. And if you have an earth element, then that can mean as well, like that you're into herbs and making blends and using your like kitchen witch abilities, like prepare ritual foods in advance, and you'd be more crafty in general and all of that. So knowing your element basically helps you understand which skills that you should foster in order to further your development, like as a spiritual leader and as someone who can give back. How are you the most effective when helping others to be their best selves? Knowing your element also helps you identify what kind of patrons would work well with you. And it would also help you understand which types of people you tend to get along with, which types of people you should probably avoid. So if you're really pure fire, maybe you're not going to get along that well with someone who is like kind of an earth-water blend. Maybe you need someone who's more to one side or another. So that's something to consider. Okay, so how to find your element. Everyone always asks this question, and the answer is very tricky for me to give them, because it's something that you just have to know for yourself. Often you'll identify with more than one element, so some of them might be stronger than others. You have like multiple, and you might have just like put them in a hierarchy. So like mine is like spirit, air, and then kind of the rest of them. Maybe the earth a little more than fire and water. You might have multiple elements, like I said. You can sometimes base it off your star chart. So if you know like which signs are prominent in your chart, the different signs correlate with different elements. And it's actually in a very complicated way. So you have, like we talked about in the one lecture, cardinal, fixed, mutable. And then you have 4 different elements. So you have cardinal earth, but the cardinal of one element, so like for instance, in the first quadrant, you have Aries, Taurus, Gemini. Taurus is fixed earth. So that is the earth quadrant. So Aries, which is cardinal fire, is the earth, or the fire of earth. So cardinal fire's energy can be described as the fire of earth. So somebody who is a cardinal fire is going to be a little like fire, a little like earth. And where fires and earth are not opposites, because they're both the physical, they're both the grounding ones. So then if somebody were the Gemini, then they would be the air of earth. So those are opposites. So they would experience, you know, a bit of kind of moodiness or shifts in a perception. They would be very rapidly able to go from being in an elevated state of mind, someone that can do divination in 1 second and then the next second be totally grounded and ready to go. And that would be the energy of mutable air, somebody who's really experienced and has a lot of wisdom. So you can use your star chart and figure out kind of which element you are based on that. Other ways to do it, sometimes people don't like doing it that way. They don't think the star chart is relevant. In my experience, it's always relevant as long as you're doing the chart properly and using an astronomy tool like Stellarium to get your dates. Don't use any dates that have been pre-calculated by anything less than an actual astronomy tool, or it will probably be wrong, the star chart. It's very complicated to make sure you have good, but just Stellarium is free, it's open source, download it, use it, trust me. I'm going to do a video on how to use it soon, so everyone can do it. I'll do like an overview on astrology next. Other ways, though, to find out your element besides astrology, you can ask yourself, you know, do you get excited during storms? If you do, there might be some chaos in you. If you wave your hands out the window when you're driving and you like roller coasters and you like going fast and feeling the wind through your hair, you know, skydiving is something that sounds appealing to you. You tend to be very mystical and you like to talk about the occult and go ghost chasing, ghost hunting, like that would be air, you know. Do you create big fires with relative ease? Do you like rituals where you put fire as a prominent thing, so putting things into a burning cauldron or something like that, burning things? Does incense and smoke scrying make the most sense to you? Do you think in terms of things being, you know, chewed up by smoke as opposed to, you know, flowing downstream, like, you know, that would all be a fire type. Someone with a lot of energy and a lot of passion and drive. If you're a water type, then you would enjoy swimming, being near the ocean. You'll probably be really creative, really emotional, really complex. That would be water types. Earth types would probably like to walk around barefoot and feel rejuvenated in nature. They would do very well growing plants and fungus and taking care of animals. You know, earth types are just really down-to-earth, wholesome people. You know, they would like being dirty and getting hands-on experience. And again, if you are, you know, a medium and you always contact spirits and spirits always appear to be in your life, then you're probably the spirit would be your primary element. So most people have a primary and a backup. So that's the common thing. Some people just have like one that they're really strong in, though.
Can you have more than two?
Yeah, some people swear that they have all of them equally, and they swear that, so that happens too. Who can say they're wrong, you know? It's your divine persona, so you know you better than I do. Okay, so next we're going to talk about spirit animals. There's a lot of terms used here. Spirit animals are also called inner animals. They're almost imaginary in a sense, as in they are not physically present. They're things that you would see in your third eye, so you would call them metaphysically present. So if you had like an imaginary friend, like as a child. Like that's literally what we're talking about here. But instead of just being an imaginary friend that you invent entirely, it would be kind of like a reflection of your subconscious, and specifically the part of your subconscious that's divine in nature. So it would be like someone who can actually guide you in the same way that runes or tarot guides you. It's a reflection of your subconscious, where your subconscious has more to say than you would know consciously. They'll appear in prophetic visions and dreams, obviously. You know, that's like how they're primarily contacted, I'd say. They might offer guidance and wisdom about our true selves, things within us that need to be improved. They might help us understand things that are going to happen, or provide warnings, like as if like we already saw all of the danger signs and we just hadn't put it together consciously, but subconsciously we put it together and we understand that we're in danger. And sometimes people have more than one. This especially happens if people have extreme changes in personality brought on by, you know, intense periods of self-improvement or psychiatric care. So some of the typical terminology here, you see totems. That is like the Native American word or concept. I don't want to say Native American though, because I feel like it's really common to all forms of ancient shamanism. You find themes of it in the East as well, in Eastern shamanism. So, but the idea of a totem is that you have an archetype of an animal that you align with. From before birth, you align with this animal, and this animal guides you throughout your lifetime. And in some native cultures, they would have carved your totem for you and given it to you on a special day, like on a coming of age day, and you'd learn your totem, and that would help you understand what role you are to take in society and how you should progress forward. And it was given to you by the wise woman, you know, by the Wicca of the group, right? So whoever the wise woman or the elder or the shaman of the group was would determine who or what animal you aligned with. And they were less of guides and more of like archetypes for like behavior and how you'll develop and what kind of lessons you need to learn. They would play a critical role in spiritual growth and your life journey. And usually you'd only have one of these per lifetime. There's very few cultures where you'd have more than one totem. And this is like, if you've seen Brother Bear, it's like based on this. And I don't actually know how accurate Brother Bear is in terms of like doing justice for native cultures, but they definitely do rely heavily on the concept of totems. So that at least is a good example. Now, spirit guides are just any spirit animals or even spirit humans, like guardian angels. They all fall in this kind of the same category. You have some spirit guides that are purely animals, and those often are servants of different deities. Like if your spirit guide is a raven, then you might work with like Hecate, who has a pet raven, or Caradwin. I think both of them have pet ravens. They're so similar. But so then you have spirit guides that are like guardian angels, and those aren't really spirit animals, but they're just spirits that are present in your life always and that look out for you. So they're very similar. They will come to help you throughout life. They'll help you with specific challenges, and a lot of people have more than one spirit guide. So depending on what you mean by spirit animal, if you're talking about your inner animal, like your totem animal, or what you're talking about, you might have more than one or different ones, and you know, so there's a lot of terms here, a lot of different ways of thinking about this. I'll say for myself that my like totem animal, my real inner animal, who I really am, is a phoenix. You know, kind of like the bird of every element. So I have like many elements prominently in my chart, even including the odd ones of chaos and spirit. I have a lot of retrograde planets making different signs more important than normally they would be. So you know, I have a lot of different elements prominently in my chart, mostly air, water, but fire is there, and earth is there as well with the Virgo and the Leo. So, you know, so that's why I'm the phoenix, the bird of every element, and the divine songbird, one who sings the praises of the gods, you know. So that's like my archetype, my existence is to help bring divinity to other people. But as I got to be older, I realized that I had a lot of hardships, and I started hallucinating a dog. I just see a dog all over when I needed help, and I always thought I was going to trip over this small dog. And then I wound up getting Frank, who it turns out is my familiar, who I'll talk about it on the next slide. That's a picture of him right there when he was a little younger. So he's my familiar. He's a spirit guide who's taken physical form because as a spirit guide, he wasn't able to help me effectively. So I manifested him into physical form, brought him into existence through magic, specifically in my case through chaos magic, which I actually tend to use intuitively because it's one of my elements. So he exists basically to help me on my spiritual journey. I couldn't function without him. A lot of people will have familiars that help them on their spiritual journeys. Often they're cats or rats or dogs or even owls and birds, you know, different things. Toads is a common one. They're just very supportive of the magic. They're always on the lookout to ensure that you have good metaphysical health. So they'd always be like jumping in your lap when you don't feel good and helping make sure that your chakras stay balanced, and they wouldn't be eating if you weren't eating, you know, that kind of thing. So that's how you can tell if you have a familiar or not. Sometimes people will have a pet and they'll become a familiar because a spirit guide, like the energy will manifest within the animal. So that can happen where you can turn a pet into a familiar if you also have a spirit guide. But spirit guides usually come to you naturally. They're not something that you consciously create. It's something that you'll kind of discover when you need it. It's there. And they can take pretty much any form. A lot of people have guardian angels. A lot of people have one spirit guide or another. Just depending on your culture, it's more common to find spirit guides as people or animals. Okay, so the last topic here is the true name. So everyone who's ever initiated into anything has a true name. It's also called the divine name. Now, just because everyone has one doesn't mean that you need one. It is a serious thing to ask yourself. The idea behind it is that people are made of particles, particles are made of energy, and energy is made of vibrations. So whatever your specific layout of particles is, has on some fundamental level a specific vibration. And vibrations can be interpreted as sound. So your true name is what you sound like on a higher plane of existence. Now, you have 3 true names in Wicca, they say, one for each level. You have the first degree initiate name is what everyone calls you. You have your second degree name would be like your clan name or your high priestess name, the name of your actual higher self. And then you have a third name that you don't tell anyone, that's your true self. That is a true representation of who you are, and that's usually long and hard to pronounce. In this lecture, because this is a 101 course, we're talking about choosing your first true name, what people will call you, your magic name. You use it for religious purposes only, in ritual. You might want people to call you it all the time if you're going to be a spiritual person all the time, or you might just want to save it for ritual if that makes it mean more to you. When you're choosing a true name, and this is a true choice that you'll have to make, you might have dreams that give you suggestions, but in the end you have to really choose. You want to basically decide, what does your essence feel like? And if you were a sound, what would you sound like? Those are the questions to answer. If you want to bring the intuitive approach, you're going to kind of think of like one word which really describes you, and it's got to be metaphorical and poetic, and you're going to have to just be intuitive. If you want a more concrete approach, you would just choose a language from your heritage or one which you particularly like. Say you connect to the pantheon of that culture and you've done extensive research into that culture and it just makes sense to you, you might choose that. I find it's usually better to work with cultures from your own heritage, but that's just my experience. Usually it'll match the pantheon that your patron is from. And then you'll select a concept which encapsulates your essence. So maybe your essence is healing. Maybe it's music. Maybe it's, giving back to the world in some way. Maybe it's being powerful or wise or unique, something like that. So you'll find one word which matches that concept, and then you'll translate it into the target language, and that'll be your true name. So, for example, my first religious name is Tehillah, and it's Hebrew, meaning psalm or song for God. So I'm the songbird, phoenix, which I've known for years, ever since I was a kid. And I sing the praises of God to any who'll listen to me, and I love God, and I love divinity, and I love religion, and I love helping people find religion, and that's my purpose here, is to sing the praise of God. So, psalm. So I took that in Hebrew, and that fits in with my patron as well, who's Sumerian, which comes from the same part of the world, even though it's different time periods, and Tehillah. So then we have Oganslav here. So he's Russian, and we decided, and his element is fire, which we determined by a lot of reasons, both by the way that he perceives of meditation and the way that he interacts with fire. He has a lot of earth and water in him as well. He's a healer, and he likes, the earth, and that all kind of goes together with the fact that his inner animal is a dragon. And he's a very, very old soul. So we chose ancient Russian for the language, and we translated fire, which is Ogon, and then glorious. In ancient Russian, they would always have one of several endings, and that was what all of the people who had names got, and everyone else was just called butcher or tailor, and that was it, So his name in ancient Russian would be Oganslav, would mean glorious flame, glorious fire. So that's how you would go about choosing a true name. If you want any suggestions, or you want to let me know what suggestions you have, feel free to leave a comment, and we can talk about what you guys are thinking about doing. But that's definitely kind of the next step forward here. So the last step here is, let's talk about the last step here. Yeah, so the next way forward here, so the homework this week, I know a lot of people out there don't really like Scott Cunningham, and I'm working on writing my own book that'll hopefully address some things differently than how he addressed them, in ways that people like more. But I still think, for the most part, he gives a very good perspective of designing one's own solitary practice. So if you are at all interested in self-initiation, or if you want to just read what self-initiation is about, then I would check out the remaining 2 readings here, are basically what we haven't covered by Scott Cunningham yet. Otherwise, I think really in terms of reading, you have a good perspective. You've gotten through most of Doreen Valiant's stuff. You've gotten through a lot of Gardner, and a lot of the stuff that really is the fundamentals of the religion. You got through a lot of Liber Newell, which is, the basics of doing magic, and that's just really the best way of receiving that. If you want further reading, though, you could check out, there's a book called Crafting Your Own Traditions. That's pretty good. That's about solitary practice as well. You've gone through the Gardnerian Book of Shadows. You can look through Scott Cunningham or his own Book of Shadows. There's lots of books of shadows out there you can download and check out if you're interested in what different groups do. If you're interested in initiating in the open-minded path, then definitely you should join our coven if you're not already a member. I can go ahead and initiate you in the path. You can initiate yourself, and then we'll will recognize the self-initiation, assuming you send in a description and you send in what you send for your oaths, and it all is up to our standards. But you have to be a member of our inner court to do that. So if you're interested in joining our coven and taking that route, then check out the instructions to apply on our website, www.covenoftheopenmind.com/apply.html. The homework for this week, if you did want to initiate in our lineage, or even if you just want to get credit for, doing this coursework on your own, and you want to do your own self-initiation still, determine your element, decide if patrons are for you, and select a mode of divination. You might not know your patron right now, and that's okay. Just determine if you want one or not, and what cultures you think that patron might come from, just so you have a direction on what you need to research and where you're going. And you do need to have some form of divination that you do well. So if you're a fire type and you want to do fire scrying, if you're a water type you want to do water scrying, if you like runes, if you like tarot, whatever works best for you. Pendulum, find one form of divination and really work at it and really learn how to perfect it so that you can use it in a wide variety of applications, and you can really help other people effectively doing it. Offer to give sample readings for people, that kind of thing. You have to select a true name, or in our coven, if you don't want a true name and you don't think you need one, then you have to be able to answer this question. If you don't think that you should have a true name and you don't believe in the concept of true names, then how can you help others find their true name in the future? If you can answer that question and you really don't think you need a true name and you've got a good understanding of why, then I'll believe that. But for the most part, I think just about everyone has a true name, and that you should really sit down and take a good look at yourself and see if you can't find what the perfect name is. And reach out to me or reach out to your loved ones and your friends if you need any advice about what reminds you of this, and try to figure out what your spirit animal, your inner animal is as well. That can help you determine your true name as well. So that's all well and good. If you are doing this course for credit, really, then by the time you're done with this lecture, you should feel ready for initiation. You might not feel ready, but you should know you're ready. You should have a general sense of, this is what Wicca is. Wicca is, in fact, for me. This is how I want to express my Wiccan self, at least for right now, and this is my way forward, and that's what you should have put together at the end of this lecture. And if you don't feel like you have that understanding, definitely reach out to me. If you feel like you need to initiate with a teacher, I am a second degree Wiccan High Priestess, so I can do Wiccan initiations. I've decided to found the open-minded path. You can read more about that on our website as well. And this is our form of Wicca and our specific lineage, so if you're interested in being an open-minded Wiccan, then I can initiate you under myself. If you want to do a self-initiation, then design yourself a ritual. If you want feedback, send it in. If you want to be recognized as initiated, then you do have to send it in, and we'll publish it on our website under ritual in the Ritual Encyclopedia. And I have editing experience. So this is for inner court members only, people who want to be recognized as initiated in the open-minded path, or initiated in their own tradition name, if you so choose. If you want the title to be recognized, you have to send us your ritual, and we'll publish it on the website, and we don't have to publish it if you have any good reason not to. We could discuss that. And that's it. That's the whole series. I'll give you guys a brief update. I'll say, I'm going to be writing a textbook, and I'm going to redo this course with that book instead, and I'll do the course in much smaller increments, or much more videos of much shorter length. It'll be the light version, so anyone who got through the end of this, you can take a look out for that, but I don't think you'll need it. And if you're interested in participating in our coven further, or contributing any videos of your own, you can feel free to reach out to us, covenoftheopenmind@gmail.com. I hope you guys found this course helpful, and blessed be.